Welcome back to Lost in Roshar, the ultimate journey through the Stormlight archive. I'm Christian.
And I'm Jimmy. Today we are diving into chapters 12 and 13. As always, full spoilers ahead for all of Stormlight Archive. This is a reread podcast, so if you have not finished the first 4 books, we would suggest that you come back at a later time. But for everyone else, welcome back, and we are happy to have you. Just so everyone at home knows, almost every single time we do the intro, I interrupt Christian on the first take. And I try my very best to make him laugh with the most ludicrous thing I can think of. And it's honestly the best part of my week.
And he gets me every time. That's the most annoying part. I thought I could build myself up by, what are we in now? The 9th? Are we in the 9th episode?
We are in the 9th episode.
Whoa, that's crazy. But he's got me every time. I'm 0 for 3, I think, the amount of times you've done this. Maybe I'll get you. Maybe you need to do the intro.
We might have to switch. Maybe every 10 episodes, we'll switch it up, just to keep it sharp.
And I want to tell people to keep their Safe-Hands covered. It's like, where's my PSA?
I feel like if we ever made merch, that would be the first shirt to make, right?
Yeah. I think they would think we're some weird cult. Like, if someone's wearing a shirt that says keep your safe hand covered, they would probably like, ooh, that looks like a group I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, that applies to the cult bite model, right? Like the controlling of media and all that. I could see it. I could see us starting our own cult. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, like a Rosharian cult. And we all have Chull helmets or something. I don't know. I can't. Ooh. We got to think of a better look. But once we get that going, I think we could do quite well.
Yeah, it is definitely all about how good you look as a cult. You know what I mean? You can't be walking around in white t-shirts and loose pants. We need the shard plate. You know what I mean? And Dalinar doesn't want to color up his shard plate. We're going to keep it simple, but we're going to look good.
Yeah. And at what point are we just a club? I think cult has some sort of something's going on here.
Yeah, I kind of want that baggage.
Yeah, you want that? Okay, yeah, great, brilliant. Well, we'll work it out. We'll do a poll on how we want the cult to look, and we'll talk about it next episode.
I can't wait to be banned from YouTube. This is
1 minute in, and we're forming a cult. Oh my god! This is the quality. The quality dip is just going straight down. How's your week? How's your week been, dude?
It's good. Been busy. Been very, very busy, but I've been having a lot of fun getting back, into the second part of Way of Kings and talking to the Kholins, and just, being in Roshar, man. It's great. And I'm also reading Shadow of the Torture by Gene Wolfe, which I'm getting my mind blown by. So that's always fun. But yeah, not bad. Not too bad. You're busy. How are you? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm busy. I'm packing lots of boxes and doing a move at the moment. So it was a tight squeeze to get these chapters in this week. And like you said, man, seeing these boys again, felt good. Felt good to be back in the Dalinar and Adolin POV. Felt like we're back in Stormlight for reals now.
Yeah, and also just knowing where we go. It's oh yeah, Renarin's a person. I totally forgot Renarin.
Yeah. There's glasses. I love how, didn't we have a chat glasses, are they rare? I think we said that with Liren, and then I'm like, oh, bloody hell, Renarin exists. He's wearing a pair of glasses the entire series.
Yeah, and just being the nerd, not want to be at the front lines.
Yeah, well, epilepsy will do that to you. I had to remind myself what his exact condition was. I couldn't remember when I was reading these. Renarin's, there are some characters that just slip your memory. You selectively keep things from certain series, and then after if you haven't read it for a few years, people get lost in your memory.
Well, especially by book 4. I mean, there's just so much to the series. The scope is massive. This is truly an epic. That tag gets thrown around a lot of epic fantasy, but the more I remember from the series, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this is really truly some epic project. So it's not surprising that people fall to the wayside, right? Elhokar, I know, right? And we've talked about how he passes away and he gets murdered or whatever, but we kind of see him here, and I'm like, man, I forgot all the characterization that gets placed on him in just a chapter or two.
Oh, there was so much characterization in these chapters. It was so good to me. Usually I'm the guy who's where's the lore? Give me a Cosmere reference. But here I was just enjoying being in their heads. And I think that's the case. We remember Elhokar because his story's done. His arc is complete. He died. But Renarin, I'm always where are we up to with him? What's the latest thing by Rhythm of War? Uh, don't really remember. To be fair, I don't really remember clearly, and that's part of the fun to like actually rediscover this stuff. Because everyone says like, "Oh, I wish I could read this for the first time again." Sometimes it feels like that. Hey.
Oh, definitely parts of it, you know, and those are the best series, the ones that you can go back to and find something else to attach yourself to on another reread. And this is definitely turning out to be the case for Stormlight. We had a weekly poll though, and we were talking about all of the books. We were talking about all 4 books, and we were saying, what is y'all's favorite Sanderlanche, aka the most epic stand up out of your chair ending? And the results surprised me just a little bit.
Ooh, okay. Well, our clear winner with 49. But before I say this, our most popular poll to date, thank you very much, guys, 3,000 votes. It's a new record for Lost in Roshar. Beautiful. But with 49% of the vote, so almost 1,500 votes, was Oathbringer. This didn't surprise me. Why did Oathbringer being the winner surprise you?
Yeah, it did a little bit because, I mean, I know that the ending in the Sanderlanche is insane in that book, but I feel like whenever I hear people talk about Sanderlanche's, Words of Radiance is always brought up. And I do feel, and this is obviously anecdotal, but I do think that Words of Radiance seems to be the highest regarded book in the Stormlight archive.
Yeah.
I even know people who aren't really big on the series, but say, man, but Words of Radiance, that was a heck of an ending. So to me, I was thinking Words of Radiance was going to be the go-ahead winner, but you know, 49, I mean, that's a commanding victory.
Yeah.
49, like you said, 1,500 votes. And this is one I would have picked. I actually would have picked Oathbringer. I really enjoyed Oathbringer, but I know it's a little bit more polarizing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll go through the votes and I'll give you my take. So, second place was Words of Radiance, 24% of the votes. Way of Kings, 16%. Rhythm of War, the lowest at 11%, but with a lot of defense in the comments, which were, man, reading the comments was like reminding me why this is my favorite series, because it took me back to, you know, like right now, my memory of Stormlight is going to buy books with Shallan and like, you know, walking around some rocks with Kaladin. But I've forgotten all these glorious, glorious moments that are coming up. Not to say this hasn't been great, but I'm like, oh man, all these amazing moments. I remember reading these scenes. I remember them really hitting me hard. I think all of these Sanderlanches have their own strengths. Every ending of these books are amazing for different reasons. Mm-hmm. For me, Oathbringer is like I forget which chapter it is, but it is like 100 pages or something ridiculous, and it's just swapping POVs, and people are doing ridiculously cool stuff for a long time. It's a huge power up. Yeah. Yeah, Yasna's just like spawning stairs and like killing people, and Seth's falling from the sky, lifts sliding through, and like Dalinar's summoning freaking perpendicularity. Like everything's going crazy. Like it is insane, and I get why it won. But I don't know, man. There's something about the ending of The Way of Kings that had that emotional impact that I still don't think has been topped. Would you agree? Yeah, you know, I think whenever I think about Way of Kings, a lot of people are like, really? You like it that much? There's that, you know, a long portion of the book that is really just Kaladin trying to get back on his feet. But it's the ending, which, by the way, I've forgotten a lot of details about, so I'm excited to get there in the reread. Yeah. But you're right. I remember that resonating with me emotionally. And at the end of the book, I said, okay, I'm in. Like you've sealed the deal for me, Sanderson. I'm invested. And Words of Radiance, I like Words of Radiance more as a book. But Way of Kings definitely had, I think, more of the emotional attachment. I actually kind of feel like I lost more emotion as I went on. And I don't necessarily mean that as a bad thing. It's just that there's so much happening. I'm not sure where to put the weight. Yeah, I totally understand that. Totally understand that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, because this feels way more intimate, this The Way of Kings. And it's that moment where it's like all like the storylines click between Dalinar and Kaladin's story like so well. Yeah. In that final scene where he's like, we got to go back. We got to go save him. And it's just Bridgefall running. Just them, you know, and you're just like, oh, it's just let's go. Yeah, it's such a good moment. It's got that focus. Whereas like Oathbringer is like 50 like climactic movies ending at the same time, and you're like, where do I look? This is madness. Yeah, and Oathbringer might also be the riskiest book. I mean, he definitely broke his typical structure and went with a couple different climaxes, and it's not something that you see often in a lot of books. The only
book I can really think of that has that type of moment, I would say, is like Storm of Swords and the Bone Hunters. And Bone Hunters is very much 2 books. And I would say Oathbringer, with its endings, almost feels like 3 or 4 books kind of coming in to the close there, which is probably why it won the poll so decisively. Rhythm of War, I was surprised it was so close to Way of Kings, because I did not find the Sanderlanche and Rhythm of War to be anywhere near the level as the others, personally.
Yeah, me neither. I think it had a strong emotional Sanderlanche.
Mm-hmm.
It had that emotional payoff of like Kaladin with his fourth ideal, emotional scenes with him like speaking with Tien somehow. All the things with Raboniel and Navani. And I mean, the biggest like holy crap moment was Taravangian killing Odium. That was the most
That's the best
insane
part of the
thing.
book, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it was freaking amazing.
Taravangian is the best character in Stormlight. How about that? I love it. He's my favorite Sanderson character.
Yeah, he's so cool. Whenever it clicked to me, whatever Sanderson was doing with his whole like he's dumb one day and a genius the other, like I found that just to be brilliant.
Yeah, very fun.
When doing some research today, I saw in the Way of Kings primer, Naren was actually planned to be the dude who wrote the diagram, which is interesting. I'm glad everything turned out the way it did. But look, I think all these endings have their strengths and they're all great. I'm actually going to put forth the case that maybe Words of Radiance was the perfect balance of like the character moments, the cool spectacle, the emotional moments, and like some revelations in the story too. I feel like that's like the perfect Sanderlanche, but Oathbringer is probably a more like exciting one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember ripping through Words of Radiance. I think it took me about 2 months to read Way of Kings, not because I wasn't enjoying it, just it's a big book. And I think I read Words of Radiance like a week.
Me too.
And that pacing of that book was excellent. I mean, the opening of it is wild. I really enjoyed everything about that book. That's the one I'm most excited to reread alongside Rhythm of War, because I would just want to experience my least favorite and my favorite. My favorite being Words of Radiance, my least favorite being Rhythm of War, and see what it's like coming back to it years later. Also, having read hundreds and hundreds of other fantasy books underneath my belt, my reading taste has changed quite a bit. So I think it'll be really interesting, and I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, me neither. And having read a handful of other books between them, I mean, I've watched a lot more things. But yeah, look, I'm excited to see. Does my old decrepit self feel the same way as my youthful hopeful man did when I first read these books? No, it's going to be good. Before we move into these chapters, though, we round of applause, please, as you listen to this, because our man Jimmy was correct with his non-Balat theory. Thank you all for commenting and pointing me towards confirmation that something magical is going on here. How did you feel, Jimmy, whenever I sent you this?
I feel validated. I feel vindicated after all of the naysayers, the haters, if you will, saying, Jimmy, you're crazy. And it turns out, hey, I got one right out of 1,000 of my predictions. That is, now you could claim, well, he knew that, he read it on. I did not. This is just something I felt. I felt like Sanderson was being way too on the nose with how hateable this guy was. It was almost tropey in a way. And based on what someone commented, and then you looked it up and found that the case is that there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah, well, this is what exactly. I'm just going to take out the most important bits. Basically, someone asked Sanderson what you said. Is there something magical going on with Shallan's brother? He's a bit weird. He says, what's happening to Nambalat is magically enhanced. He goes, what's up with him is being exaggerated by certain forces moving in on Roshar. That just takes me to Unmade straight away. I'm like, okay,
certainly, yeah, I would agree. And now it's wondering why and how these things. I don't think the who. I mean, maybe who of the Unmade, right? Is a compelling question to ask, but why him? Why Shallan's family? Which you have your theory, which I'm a big fan of. If he's her mom being a herald, and I hope we get some answers in the 5th book, because now that's like my pet theory.
Well, they've just reintroduced him by the end of Rhythm of War, because the Ghostbud's like, hey, got your brothers. But also, I would like to fit my theory, because that's what I always love to do. Um, certain forces moving on Roshar, kind of that could be heralds, could be, maybe. But I think unmade is a bit more likely. But yeah, it was cool to see that. It was cool to get that from you guys in the comments. Thank you for mentioning that. But I think it's time to meet the boys.
The Kholins, yes, it absolutely is. And for everyone that is following along with us or been listening, you know that we've been covering the death rattles at the beginning of our reread chapters. However, this section has a bit of a different flavor to it. It is not death rattles, but a letter written by Wit, or Hoid, as we know him, and has some crazy stuff in it. But what we're going to do, we are not going to read each section of the letter. We are actually going to wait to the end of this part when we get all the way done with all these chapters for part 2, and then before the interludes, or maybe even in the same episode, we will read the letter in its entirety. So these little epigraphs, we're not going to be mentioning them until the very end of this part. We just want to put that out there. I think we decided that breaking the letter down at the end of this part may provide context to the letter, of little hints maybe that we're supposed to be picking up on. But also we think it would be easier for a breakdown if we do the letter all at once at the end.
Yeah. I remember desperately wishing I could understand this when I first read it. I'm like, why don't I get it? Why don't I didn't even know about the Cosmere. I'm just like, surely I can figure this out. I've read A Song of Ice and Fire. I can do anything. No, no chance.
There's a whole universe out there waiting to be unveiled. And it seems like all roads point to Roshar right now.
It really does. And were you struck by the chapter title like I was?
Unity. I was going to ask you, what is the symbol at the top of the chapter? It's on both of the chapters.
This is just like the Dalinar / I think Adolin also gets it. Just like, you know how Kaladin and Shallan have their chapter icon. I think it's just like the colon glyphs.
Okay.
I think that's it. I don't think there's some secret to it. Although it's on a shield. So like a lot of this symbol gets mentioned. Like some people fit it into some of the death rattles, which we'll get more of later. But I'm pretty sure it's just like colon symbols on a cool shield. Like I said, Sanderson said these are part of bigger scenes later. Maybe they make a cool shard shield with these symbols on it, but I don't know.
I mean, it almost feels like behind it there's this sphere, and it almost makes me feel like it's the blacked out sun.
Oh yeah, keep going, man. I like it.
And like maybe the Kholins are the reason why the sun ends up getting blacked out, possibly.
Oh, that fits into some of my theories. Yeah. I mean, any way we can make the sun blacked out, I'll take it.
That's right. Well, it looks like it's been scribbled over.
Yeah. You're right. Like I never actually considered the back of it. Hey.
Right. It very much looks like something that was scribbled over in an illustration. Maybe it's in Shallan's sketchbook. Who knows? But I just thought that was a bit of an interesting little detail to this emblem at the top of chapters 12 and 13.
Yeah, I think this warrants a YouTube video one day of like, let's get all the symbols and let's just go nuts with theories.
Yeah, and it'd be nice in a video format because you can actually show them, right?
Yeah.
Zoom 100%. In and do all that stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to add more video elements to this podcast. Right now, it's like I'm doing tidbits with quotes and stuff on YouTube. I think we have so much room to grow as we continue. But yeah, look, Unity. I just thought, okay, everything I'm just really cognizant of. These are the first chapters for all of these characters in an epic fantasy, and this is Brandon Sanderson we're dealing with, so everything's so intentional, right?
Yeah.
So we've got Unity, we've got Dalinar and Adolin. It switches between them. And look, his whole character, right? He's been told, unite them. And there's this whole discussion, which we'll talk about many a time, I'm sure, as we go through the Dalinar visions, is what the heck does that actually mean? Like, what is he meant to unite, right? I don't know. My brain just started going with theories right away with Dalinar being like, will he unite the Shard of Honor and like be unity or something? Like he will become unity, or like, you know, you can so see this chapter title being like, oh, a big aha moment one day.
Yeah, I would agree with this. And, you know, another thing that kind of struck me here is like thinking about the Radiance, right? And bringing them together. And Dalinar does have a hand in that. And, you know, the Everstorm is coming, the Everstorm. And me and you have already postulated the fact that we think that the Everstorm might be something that we haven't seen yet. and it's not just simply another storm, but something much bigger. The apocalyptic type event that we're expecting. And I think that the unite them could also have a bigger purpose, and even maybe just have a double meaning as well. So I would agree with you, and especially whenever you're seeing Dalinar with these visions early on, and maybe we're just, we have 6 more books. So maybe we are looking back on it now and being like, it can't be that simple, but really it only seems simple because we have the answers. So I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know if I feel like I'm being too curious. I guess maybe that would be the word I would use, or maybe suspect. I'm a little too suspect, possibly, of the writing here, but I don't know.
Yeah, like, look, think about it, man. Did any of, look, as epic as the ending of these books were with like the quote unquote Everstorm and these beings of odium coming, have they ever really felt like, as big as you want it to be?
No.
As in, like, this is the end? Not really.
No.
So it feels like something big is coming.
Yes.
And unite them, it just feels like it's such an open term that could be applied to anything almost.
Yeah, it really does. And Stormfather, I mean, there's a lot going on with Dalinar. And I just wanted to remark, and we kind of said this already, but the characterization in these 2 chapters is excellent. Like, Sanderson does many things very well. I think that his beginning characterization in this chapter of Unity is some of his best writing. And it's not because of any purple prose or anything like that, but it's because of what he gives us. And I'm going to read the beginning of this chapter. It says, "Today, King Elhokar announced, riding beneath the bright open sky, is an excellent day to slay a god, wouldn't you say?" "Undoubtedly, your majesty," Sadeas replied with smooth, quick, and said with a knowing smile, "One might say the gods, as a rule, should fear the Alethi nobility, most of us at least." Adolin gripped his reins a little more tightly. It put him on edge every time High Prince Sadeas spoke. "Do we have to ride up here at the front?" Renarin whispered. "I want to listen," Adolin replied softly. So, in those, maybe 8 to 9 lines, we get Elhokar talking about it's an excellent day to slay a god, which, I mean, you have to already assume that this guy's a bit arrogant.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit delusional would be a good word to use there. You see Sadeas is a complete brown-noser, right? He's sucking up. First person to speak, "Yes, your king. Yes, your grace." And then you have Renarin saying, "Do we really have to be up here?" Showing that Renarin is a lot more timid. And then you have Adolin, who is gripping his reins just a little more tightly, on edge every time High Prince Sadeas spoke. So we know that there's a tension there. We kind of get an idea of who Sadeas is. Elhokar seems delusionally arrogant already, talking about murdering gods, and then Renarin being very, very timid. This establishes so much of what these characters are and who they are, and it is very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, it's so efficient, but so impactful, and they just get built upon as the chapter continues. Yes. I highlighted that line from Elhokar, and I just I said badass way to open a chapter.
I agree.
And then I highlighted the line from Sadeas, and I wrote "shut up." That was my note. So
we get to the introduction, and then I would say the interpretation of these lines, what I get presented is true. However, Sanderson takes the next chapter and 2 and actually builds a little bit of nuance behind this. Obviously, we see that Elhokar is struggling with filling the shoes of his father, and also being super nervous about what can happen to him. We even see Sadeas work with Dalinar to do his duty to protect his king. And then we see that Renarin, hinted at by Wit, is a lot more capable and okay than people think to be. And then, of course, Adolin's just a mess, in my opinion.
He's all over the place.
He's great in these first 2 books for me. So even though we're presenting things at face value, which I would say that what I said was accurate, there's still a lot more to these characters, and Sanderson's just slowly kind of peels away those layers by making them interact with each other, which I love.
Yeah, it feels like we've got like 10 times more interaction than we're used to so far in this book. It's been very much 2 people having a chat most of the chapters we've read, but this is like a whole cast of characters we're getting introduced to. I think it was a pretty bold move to hold off on these guys for so long.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of risks that he takes in Stormlight Archive, and a lot of them are right here in the first book, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the old double prologue. Interesting decision to introduce Renarin and Dalinar through the Adolin POV. And I think that was most likely intentional because I think Adolin is going to be the main Kholin in the back half of the Stormlight archive, because I think Dalinar is dead in book 5 personally. And this is how we get our first like real description of what's going on with Dalinar, and it's from the Adolin's perspective. He says, Dalinar Kholin was going mad. Whenever a high storm came, he fell to the floor and began to shake. Then he began raving in gibberish. Often he'd stand blue eyes, delusional and wild, swinging and flailing. Adolin had to restrain him lest he hurt himself or others. So one thing that's weird about this, and I don't think this is a mystery, but this is just like one of these things that kind of bothers me, is that we're getting this chapter from Adolin's limited third person perspective, and he calls his dad Dalinar Kholin.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a little weird,
right? Yeah, is that just in the writing style? I get you. Sometimes I always wonder in these like third person perspectives, because sometimes there is exposition, right?
Yes.
It's like sometimes you feel like you're breaking out of their head for a minute, and he's just making it a bit convenient for the reader.
That's exactly what it is. It is to remind you that it's Dalinar Kholin, and it is, and that's what it is. It's a signpost to say, hey, this is his full name, this is his dad, same last name, and everything. But there are times where Sanderson does this that it takes me out a little bit, because I'm in Adolin's head, and I'm trying to think like I'm Adolin, and then it'll say like, Dalinar Kholin, and I'm like, I've never thought of my dad as Charles. I'm not trying to bash the writing or anything.
No, I get you.
But it is important to notice that he's saying he's going mad, he's going through these fits, and Adolin thinks about his grandfather who came back from the war and would have war flashbacks. So we hear a little bit about PTSD, and he says, "Is this what's happening to my father?" And we know, of course, that it is not.
No, your dad's in a VR experience, mate. He's getting a whole other thing. I saw the line about Adolin's grandfather, and I was like, "Oh, is this some family thing?" And then I'm like, classic PTSD. Yeah, I got so excited.
I immediately went to the lineage. I was like, the family tree's rotten.
The red string was out.
Yes.
Who is he?
This is not a Devar family tree, so it is it's not as hectic, I don't think.
No, I don't think. Well, unless you read Oathbringer, it gets a bit hectic. But yeah, more or less.
So we see here that Adolin obviously hates Sadeas, and he actually thinks about dueling Sadeas, like a challenge, and that's interesting because that happens to be a pretty big point.
Yeah, because like I was reading this thinking, man, it foreshadows Adolin killing this dude, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, what else is it foreshadowing? What else is this first chapter going to tell us? I don't like. Yeah. Now I'm thinking, do I hate Sadeas because I'm reading as Adolin, or do I just hate it? I think I just hate him.
I had a little bit of respect for Sadeas in this chapter.
Hey, I like the little bro acknowledgement between him and Dalinar, but that's not enough.
I should say the second chapter. Actually, it's not this chapter, but in our chapters that we read, I actually was like, you know what, Sadeas, not a great guy, you could say, but did have some merit.
Yeah, look, I agree. And Dalinar defends him too to Adolin. He's like, like we've got our differences, but he's still, he still does his job.
Yes.
But he's just such a prick about it. Like
he really is.
You don't have to be. Yeah. What struck me so much is like, I really just felt the love and respect from Adolin towards his brother and his dad. Like there's just so much there where it says, what did you do as a son when the man you loved, the greatest man alive, started to lose his wits? He's like, I don't know, I just love this family connection we keep seeing, and he's so nice to Renarin as well. It just felt like a good bond between the
and
three.
That line is true in the human experience for me, because I don't know if you've ever had a loved one that is, been down in a hospital bed, or if you have, like my grandfather went through dementia, and you're just like looking at this, I'm looking at this World War II veteran that is the bravest man I knew, and he's out of his mind, and that's a tough thing to swallow.
Man, I've had the same thing with grandparents as well, and you just think they had this entire life, they had all these experiences, and you see them like that, it's really hard to deal with. And Adolin's feeling this way, like, is this, he sees glimpses of the Blackthorn and the guy he knows his dad to be, but he's also like, man, are we losing him? What do I do?
Yeah, and then we jump into Dalinar's POV, and we see him starting to become a little bit of the Blackthorn. He's trying to do this race with Elhokar, and he's like, I'm gonna smash this kid, and it is smashing. But it says a lot about Dalinar's character, the fact that he actually backs off and then lets Elhokar win because he needs to unite them. And it's so important that he does that. And in these chapters we also see Dalinar think about how at first he says, I'm sorry, Gavilar, and we don't get much else, but then a little bit later in the chapter he says, I was a drunk and unable to help my brother. And it's like, but you're seeing this and he's following the codes, and as a reader you're thinking like, what is up with this guy? There is so much going on.
Oh man, yeah, he feels like like he's going through AA or something, and he's trying to
be better.
Be better and clean up. Sorry, the lost brain in me is just looking at Dalinar's first lines, unite them. I'm sorry. This is like, if that's the first line of your character ever, this is it.
That's right.
He's uniting something. I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something. Maybe he, as Kaladin says, honor is dead, I can see what I can do. Dalinar says, unite him. And they both wink at the camera. And then there's the ending of Stormlight 5. That's the missing piece.
Yeah, what a great first line. Unite them. The words whispered in Dalinar's mind. He couldn't rid himself of them. They consumed him as he trotted gallant across a rocky boulder-strewn plateau on the shattered plains. And a place that we will become very familiar with over the next few hundred pages.
Oh, epic, dude. What did you think of the Rhyshadium gallant and stuff? How cool are they?
They're very cool. Very, very cool. I love it.
Yeah, so there's some, I didn't really go down the rabbit hole with them because I feel like a lot of these sort of things we're going to see a lot over the next few episodes. So we can't dive into every piece of lore, but the whole bonding thing is quite interesting with them, how intelligent they are and just how much better they are than the average horse. Like heaps.
Is there more to them?
Yeah, there is. I just, I didn't really refresh my memory. All I know is like there's more spren stuff and bonds and all that. Yeah,
that's right. When I saw that, I was thinking that, and recalling that. And the next time they're mentioned in a chapter, maybe we'll do a little bit of a deep dive on what we think's going on with them.
Yeah, they're just so cool, and just like the scale of all of this was so awesome. Just like, oh, he's wearing shard plate, he's 8 feet tall, and the visor goes translucent, and he's just like, it felt like Halo, man. It felt like Master Chief. It really did.
6 foot long broadsword. Like, come on, let's go.
Hell yeah.
Let's go. And like, Vani's over here making shard bows, which, by the way, I thought it was really, and we're kind of getting into both chapters here.
Yeah.
I think, are we okay with that? Just kind of talking about both, like, because we're not separating by death rattles. So we're kind of talking about chapters 12 and 13. But in 13, we hear about the shard bows. And I thought it was really interesting that Adolin was like, I didn't like that name for them, though, because nothing the Fabrial technology could compare to this. Like, he almost doesn't refer to him as natural, but like you kind of get that feeling. These things so long, and it really just made me wonder, like, and maybe this has already been answered, by the way, so you can tell me if I'm dumb, like how these things came to be. Yeah,
right. Well, okay. There's so much. So basic, you've broken my brain. I'm not getting my 15 thoughts we're trying to get out at once there. Yeah, so look, the shard blades and the shard plate, we all know they're like, the basis of them are spren. So like the shard blades that everyone has are Deadeye spren. And Renarin, whenever he gets one, he like can tap into that for whatever reason because he hears the scream every time
that's right.
Blade, right?
I just remembered this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's fine. And then like we only learned really late, I believe, that like shard plate was also the same thing because like whenever Kaladin leveled up again in Rhythm of War, all the spren formed into like shard plate immediately, which was sick. Yeah, it's so cool, right? So like, yeah, just making something mechanically doesn't really live up to that. So I think they all know, like they've got this, it's got this presence about it, right? Maybe they
Yeah,
just can't
yeah.
figure
There's
it out.
something about that statement though that really stood out to
Mm,
me for two reasons. One, I said, okay, this is maybe Sanderson's little nudge that there's a lot more going on with the shard plate and this stuff. Like
yeah.
you need to be thinking about why they're so special. But also, it made me think about he's talking about how old it is and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, these people think they're from Roshar.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? Like they think that they were born here and this is where like humanity started, which we know
Mm,
as the reader now that that's not the case.
yeah. It's they got a whole misinterpretation of their entire history,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah,
really fun just because you forget too after you read in their minds for long enough, you forget as well.
yeah, so
Um,
true.
yeah, he puts the blinders on you, and I usually just like smile and go along with Sanderson. I'm very easily tricked by him. Not this time. No, I refuse. We also saw the thrill. The thrill is back. What do you think of the
Mm.
thrill?
I liked it the first time I read it, and I liked it again.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, yeah, okay, so this is like coming from an unmade. It was cool to like know that this
Yeah.
time and
Wow.
and see. There's just like a lot more unmade stuff than I was expecting
Mm-hmm.
because we're already talking about with Nan Balat, we're talking about it with the Death Rattles, and now we're talking about it with the Thrill. So there's a lot of like just a lot of background groundwork. And in that same scene, I loved this. The gauntlets covered his hands, but the ancient armor somehow transferred sensation to his fingers. It was as if he were wearing thin leather gloves. And it's just like, yeah, dude, that's way better than a shard bow or whatever. As cool as that is, Navani, props to you, but like, this is crazy tech. It felt like
Yeah.
high tech stuff out of nowhere in this series, and it just continues this theme of like Stormlight being very unique in fantasy. And in my opinion, you've read a lot more, but this feels like a weird sci-fi fantasy fusion at times.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm reading Shadow of the Torture by Gene Wolfe right now, Book of the New Sun, and
Yeah,
it does a lot of stuff that like blends the lines, and it's described in one way, but if you actually look beyond just the on-page description, you're like, wait, is this tower and castle actually a rocket ship? Like,
oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
craziness,
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I like about Stormlight is there are times where this feels just as sci-fi as something like Dune,
yeah,
with just the technology that's being used. And I love that Navani's favorite technology gets mentioned. I think the shard bows are great, but
yeah.
there is something supernatural about shard plate and shard blades, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Thinking of this like Dune. If you saw people in Shardplate jumping down these 40-foot rocks and like the ground exploding as they land, you would assume you're watching a sci-fi, not a
Yes,
fantasy.
that's right. And this is the stuff that has to get nailed for an adaptation. Like
Oh
you cannot say, well, we'll just put them in medieval armor and they'll have like
no,
no, no,
it'll be
no,
a
no.
massive deal, eh?
Yeah, you can't be doing all that. Um, yeah. So what do you think about this race between Dalinar and Elhokar?
I just, as much as I respect Dalinar for stopping himself and being like, no, let the boy win. Um, I was a bit annoyed because I'm just like, this Elhokar needs to be humbled a little, at least in the way you know him now. Like you don't understand just how much he's going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it again, like we were saying before, it's not only he's just doing so much in these chapters. There's so much characterization. You see his relationship, his guilt for basically feeling responsible for Gavilar's death, wanting to take care of his son and be better. But also he explains Shardplate exactly, and the Shattered Plains and the Chasmfiends, like all at the same time.
Yeah,
I just felt so I felt so well fed. I felt so
I love that.
content.
I
I'm
love
just like
that.
I'm full. I'm just like getting everything I want right now. I'm not missing anything. These chapters like filled me up. And what was interesting was seeing Glory Spren. I liked this little touch, and it reminded me of a. So I'll read it. Um, this is after Elhokar wins the race. It says, "Glory's friend, like tiny golden translucent globes of light, began to pop into existence around him, attracted by his sense of accomplishment." What what made me laugh was because I watched a clip recently of Sanderson talking about the adaptation, and he was like, I just can't have Spren look like Looney Tunes with like the stars going around someone's head when they fall over or whatever. And I read this, I'm like, this feels very Looney Tunes, but like in a way that I'm not bothered by. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't really take me out. I've always just kind of imagined it. I don't know. I guess I don't know how I really imagined it because I'm not a visual reader, but it's never really felt that way to me, I guess, is the only thing I can really say about it. I've just kind of always accepted it was a part of the world, I guess.
Yeah, like there's a few ways I'd imagine it. So part of me is like, okay, it's like little animated GIFs going off around his head, which is a bit more egregious. But another part of me is like, when you get those little artifacts with your eyes whenever you look at the sun and you blink and you see all the little, like, Spren could be more of an abstract artifact sort of thing.
So are you telling our listeners to stare directly into the sun to see their Spren?
Yes, that's part of our cult. You must stare in the sun with your
I love it.
With your safe hand covered. Sun safety, guys.
Rule number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think about his paranoia, Elhokar's paranoia?
I mean, very relatable. I mean, I think if my father was assassinated, I'd probably be a little bit worried it's going to happen to me too. And also, not to mention that the culture that is around Elhokar, he's probably aware that like Sadeas and all these other princes are playing games. Like they're trying to climb the ladder per se, and who knows how far someone will take that. We get the description, I think, from Adolin that basically all the princedoms are essentially like kingdoms in their own, and people are trying to climb and yada yada yada. So I think paranoia is probably on everyone's plate that is part of this.
Yeah, like it was interesting because I like that description too, because you get a sense of how this all works, and like it seemed like Gavilar was the only figurehead everyone was kind of happy to be under. Yeah. And then after he died, everyone's like, well, I was running my own kingdom anyway, and now we got this kid. And Dalinar's just like his bodyguard. I don't know. Like they're not feeling it as much. But the thing that's interesting, do you know what's going on here with part of his paranoia? Do you remember what this is going into?
No, but please remind me.
I shall. So I'll read a few lines. He's just like annoyed at Dalinar for not taking him seriously. He says, it's what they might send when we're not looking, when all is dark and quiet, that you should be trying to protect me from. And he is talking about these trespassers on his balcony, and he goes, there was someone watching me in the darkness that night. And he keeps going about these like people in the dark in the corner of his eyes, like this. He'll keep going on about this. And these are the cryptic spren, dude. They're watching him.
Now, I did remember him seeing something in a mirror at one point in one of the books.
Yeah. That's
I did remember that, and I remember the fact that was like a tip that he's kind of like Shallan in this regard.
Yeah, so like because when Patton first shows up, he's kind of like on the walls, and he just kind of bends reality or whatever. So that's what Elhokar's seeing, and the cryptic sprens are attracted by lies, right? So I looked into this more, like why were they attracted to Elhokar? And Brando Sander was like, the lie that he's been living his whole life, that he's like gonna like worthy to be king or whatever. That's what's drawn them to him. And what's cool about that also, if you want to go deeper, the cryptics don't like honest spren. So whenever Elhokar hires Kaladin as a bodyguard, he loves Kaladin so much, but like because he feels less paranoid, but all the cryptics would have left because Sill's around.
Oh my god.
Which is like a nice touch, right?
That is a beautiful touch. I love that. Wow.
Yeah. Because there's just like a whole other world going on at this, like, parallel to this.
Just people think that they're maneuvering this world on their own accord and have no external pressures. And then like you just see that this is just a big soup that everyone's got their ladle in. It is really crazy to think about all the factors that are going in on this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so fun reading about all this again. And just, again, meeting all these characters for the first time and going forward in their timeline and thinking, okay, what clues has he laid down here? But this fight with the Chasmfiend, mate. Glorious is the word that comes to mind for me. I've got glory spren going off right now. I just, I don't know. Chasmfiends are just so freaky, dude. I've always said, like, sorry to interrupt, but I've always said, right, whenever I see a book or a movie and I'm like, oh, they'll be like, who would you want to play in that movie? I'm like, I would just be the extra dude who got stomped. Like, I would be the guy on the bridge who just fell down. Like, I would be able to do nothing in this scene. Like in Attack on Titan, I'm like, oh, could I be Eren Yeager? No, there's no way. I'd be the like extra 3 hit by like the falling bell.
I'd be the dude with the shotgun.
Yeah, there's like this in the adaptation. Everyone's fighting the Chasmfiend. They've just got like a tiny Jimmy Nuts in the corner with a AA-12 or something.
Yeah, just taking my own life because I'm not sitting through this. Have you?
I'm getting the reference now. Okay, yeah,
it's a very sneaky Attack on Titan reference.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Whoa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That got dark. Have you ever seen the movie Starship Troopers?
I've seen clips of it because of Stormlight. Like someone said, like someone's made this connection before, right?
Okay, good. Because like the monsters in Starship Troopers, the aliens, they like stab through things, and I've always thought about the Chasmfiends in that regard, and in like that same kind of movement, even if it might not be totally book accurate. It's what I think about in my brain.
Yeah, it's just that large alien crustacean, kind of gooey on the inside, hard on the outside. Yes. Grossness. Yeah. Oh, if only they had shard machine guns, shard guns. I feel like that's coming. In Stormlight 10. Navani's like coming out of the workshop. Hey guys, just
here's a rocket launcher.
Little Fabrial. Yeah. She's got her RPG over her shoulder. Odium's toast, mate. Yeah. What a cool. Oh, actually, before that, I'm just kind of surfing through the chapter now. You want to talk about Hoid showing up?
Oh, absolutely. That was the next thing on my docket. I was going to say, we see Hoid says, wit, Adolin called, waving. The newcomer trotted up to them, tall and thin. The king's wit rode easily on a black gelding. He wore a stiff black coat and black trousers, a color matched by his deep onyx hair. Though he wore a long, thin sword tied to his waist, as far as Adolin knew, the man had never drawn it, a dueling foil rather than a military blade. It was mostly symbolic, and we see that Adolin also says this new wit had been with them for some months, and there was something different about him. He seemed to know things that he shouldn't, important things, useful things. Well, you don't say.
Oh man, I love this because it's also right after the Pure Lake chapter.
Yes,
when like, hey, he can dye his hair sometimes, and then he comes with his black hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it also tells you a lot about the characters too, because Renarin's like, I find him unnerving. And then I
circled that.
Yeah. And Adolin's like, best wit we've had in ages. He's not even thinking about it. He's like, this guy's great. Love this guy.
Adolin's all of us on the first read.
Yeah. Like, seriously, even I remember my dad when he read Way of Kings, when I forced it into his life, he loved wit. He's just like, this guy's the best, calling everyone out. And I'm like, actually, Dad, he's part of the Cosmere. Take notes, Dad. How dare you read for a
world hopper?
Yeah. I can already see his eyes glazing over.
Did you put on glasses so you could push him up?
Yeah, I think so. I think right at the tip of the nose is the prime spot, just so I can get my actually just really timed with that.
Yes.
Renarin's such a tease as a character, right? Mm-hmm. Brando's not even trying to like hide it. Like, this dude's something's going on, and he's just not going to give it to you right away. Hey,
yeah. And Wit even says, "I think he might be more capable than you realize."
I love that, right?
Yes.
And I is that just Hoid being like an astute observer of the human condition?
I think he's seen it all before. Yeah.
He's like, yes, another future powerful nerd. In the making.
Nerds rule the world.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think of Renarin's journey eventually, like, you know, getting powers. I don't think it started yet. I don't think there's a spren trying to talk to him or whatever yet. So yeah, but it was very fun to show up, and I like watching Dalinar be uncomfortable. There's something fun about that.
Yes, watching this unopposing man kind of put Dalinar on his back foot, especially knowing that who Dalinar is very, very entertaining.
Yeah, like people give Lift a lot of hate, but watching Lift these characters with Dalinar is just a great time.
Yes,
he's just shuffling in his shard plate like, oh, stop that, stop this.
Quit farting around.
Yes. I kind of like another dude I liked was like the I forgot his name, but like the guy setting up the hunt.
And yeah,
he was like chasing the Chol, and like Bashin, the guy right at the end of the chapter. He's like, oh man, I messed up, and then bam, straight in. Yeah, like he just was like, I'm sorry. Just another day on the job. But then we get to I mean, we've been talking about both chapters, but 10 heartbeats. Here we go. Here we go. And you know what, Jimmy? I was looking at the chapter arches because I'm just like, it's killing me. Why? Why are these faces here? Tell me why. And someone wrote a big post on it. There must have been a Reddit Q&A at some point, and this person did a great write-up of like, okay, from what I can tell, it means this, and this. And then, like, the director at Dragonsteel, one of the higher-ups, was like, yes, you've nailed it. So it's more or less the very, very short version is to do with, like, the characters in the chapter, if they're, like, sharing traits of those heralds. The, like, location you're in, the, like, theme of the chapter, you know, just like whatever vibes with it. You know, it's not that exact. But what was cool for the previous chapter, Hoid is in the top because he shows up, which is fun. And Yezrian, who was the Herald of Kings, is there because I'm assuming Elhokar, and the whole theme is like kings and stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So there is a reason for the heralds that are in the arch at the top, but it's not like
location proximity.
Yeah, which we wanted.
Now, what are the eyes? I feel like that's to let us know that the cremlings are watching.
Oh, dude, yeah, hell yeah, I love that. Actually, I love that. Yeah, that's canon. That's canon.
I'm dead serious. I literally, when I was looking, I was like, well, eyes, dude, who's watching?
Yeah, man, and look at all like the pieces around them. Yeah, oh yeah, dude. Oh, that's an eye like made up of stuff. Oh, dude,
unless
I think you got it. I think you got it.
It's the dragon that Wit is writing letter to.
Well, look, over on the 17th Shard, I haven't watched it all yet, but they just did an interview with Sanderson, and he just dropped all the dragon lore in the Cosmere, supposedly. Oh. So that could be fun to watch. But no, dude, I mean, yeah, it does look like a bit of a dragon, but no, don't ruin this is a Christian cremling moment. All right, and those are the cremlings. That has to be it. I will accept no other possibility.
That is so canon here on Lost in Roshar, folks.
Yeah. I just love the idea of this crazy Chasmfiend fight going on, and there are like two cremlings perched atop a rock being like, oh god, look at them go.
CIA, the Kremling Investigative Agency. I love it.
Can we make it canon that they wear sunglasses?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Beautiful suits. Absolutely. So 10 heartbeats. Also, there's 10 fundamental glyphs, which I thought was really interesting. And we see Oathbringer, which I will read this when Dalinar summons it. It's amazing. His shardblade Oathbringer formed in his hand, coalescing from mist, appearing as the 10th beat of his heart thudded in his chest. 6 feet long from tip to hilt, the blade would have been unwieldy in the hands of any man not wearing shardplate. To Dalinar, it felt perfect. He'd carried Oathbringer since his youth, bonding with a capital B to it when he was 20 weepings, capital, old. Which that's an interesting. We'll come back to that. It was long and slightly curved, a handspan wide, with a wave-like serrations near the hilt. It curved at the tip like a fisherman's hook and was wet with cold dew. So first off, this is an anime sword. Secondly, the 20. This is the first time we've seen a reference to the weepings, right?
I think we may have got it in a Kaladin flashback,
Okay.
maybe. I don't know, but it's just like that happens once a year. The
Yeah.
weeping, there's like 2 weeks of just like light rain. So I'm assuming that's just what they call like a birthday, you know?
That's what I'm thinking too. I just thought it was interesting that it was directly after bonding with the capital letter, like proper.
Love the capitals, mate. Yeah, bonding. Like, I don't actually remember what the process is of like you win a shard, but how do you bond with it? I forgot how they like pass over the ownership. Because like it's easy when it's like it's their spray and you're like okay, but the Deadeye ones, I don't actually recall. But yeah, look, Oathbringer, dude. Just reading that again, I was like, oh, dude,
Epic.
we're back, and so epic. Yeah, anime swords, 100%.
I'm in.
Yeah, I love like how there was this moment. I don't know if I had the line highlighted, but when he like drops it and it doesn't dissipate straight away, and as it falls, it like cuts through the rock, and then it turns to mist. I was like, dude, this is just so sick. It's just so cool. It's just so.
I mean, that's all you can say about this chapter. Like this chapter 13 is just like well written action, very easy to follow, and you're seeing things that you have never seen in any other fantasy book before. And it's just it's really well done, and I love the tension in this chapter. Even knowing what happens in it, I still felt the stakes in the risk that Renarin was taking when he runs out unguarded by the plate. Because we're just seeing people run around. Seeing Elhokar, I was like, does he die here? Like, am I? Like, I literally felt like it was kind of teasing into that. So Sanderson did a really nice job, I think, of building the tension in the scene.
I defy you, creature.
Oh my God.
I defy you.
Make it angry.
Dude, just the image of Dalinar holding it up.
Bro.
You know.
He caught the damn thing. How crazy.
Oh, that was so sick. It was so sick. Yeah, like I couldn't have explained it better myself. I also noted the violet blood. I highlighted all the violet blood mentions.
I also thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So look, okay, they were probably there in the prelude, but cremlings is all I'm going to say. I can't wait to see what color they are. But look, yeah, that was interesting, and the whole gem heart thing.
Yes,
it's been a minute. Hey, it's been a minute.
That is what we end the chapter on, and I'm like, whoa, I forgot about gem hearts.
Yeah, and I just started to think like, it's kind of weird, right?
Very weird.
Why are they in? Like, why? I mean, it's a whole like. It seems to be the theme with all the Rosharian creatures, you know, that they have these like gem hearts within them, but and it's kind of relating to what's going on with Fabrials. I don't know, like I wonder like when do you start your book, because Sanderson would have just had to figure all this out. It just seems like a lot of work before being like, all right, chapter 1.
I totally agree with you, and I'm sitting here like were they some kind of like machine, like biological machines made?
That's what it started to feel like, right? It feels almost manufactured, but is that just our human perspective of like, it's not fleshy, therefore it's from the Rosharian factory? I don't know.
Well, that's one thing I will say is remember that Roshar is not a human planet. So we do need to, things are done differently over here in a totally different species, really. So that is possible. But I get the feeling that it's almost like a machine. I really do.
Well, it's like the Parshendi have this too, though, They let the spren into their gem heart, gain the forms and everything. But for them, because we read from their POV, it feels more human, right? Less machine.
Yeah, I think it just more believable. Yeah,
it just might be the way things roll here. But like, what also has just struck me, because we just know the greater stakes and the greater story, I'm like, this is such a waste of time. What we're doing, like, what are we doing?
Oh man, you're right. They had a lot bigger fish or cremlings to fry.
Yeah, dude, we're just like living in the country, and this is where our tax dollars are going to this nonsense. All these rich bastards fighting off demons. Come on.
Playing a big old game out there, man. It's messed up.
Yeah, and they like set up the tent. Elhokar's like drinking wine with all his friends.
Or forcing people to do bridge runs. That's crazy.
Dude. Yeah, wasted taxpayer dollars. Shut it down.
Shut it down. I'm tired of this.
I'm going to tape the whole area off. I've had enough. I've had enough, actually.
We need a revolution.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, man, that felt like one big chapter to me. One big epic characterization, action, lore, wit showed up. Good stuff.
Yeah, great introductions, great characterization. I mean, I just love the action in this, man. You know, I'm one of the weird people who don't always love action in books. Like sometimes those are the parts that I never skim read, but those are the parts that I'm paying the least amount of attention to. But these ones still on a reread really gripped me, and I was very, very, very happy to be rereading them.
Yeah, look, I love Sanderson. I love his books, but reading Stormlight feels like a major step up from his other work. You know, and going between secret projects to this, I'm like, damn, man. This is where it's at.
I completely agree. I haven't read the new secret project. I'm excited too, but I just agree completely. I always pick up the other Cosmere works, and a lot of them are good. But for me, it's always like, this is what I think of when I think of Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, man. I'm just like, why am I reading this ebook? What am I doing? Where's the leather bound? Where is it?
The leather bound, bro.
It's not in my possession, so it's obviously in the wrong place. But what have I done with my life? What am I doing? I host this podcast and I don't have the leather bound, mate.
We need to get you the leather bound.
Yeah, I'll go to Utah and just knock on the door and be like, Sanderson, please, may I have a fresh printed copy of the leather bound with Christian Cremling imprinted on the front cover.
And he will slam the door closed and say, quit trying to solve my story.
He's like, mate, I'm not interested in your cult. I don't care about your hats. Get out of here.
Quit slandering the safe hand, damn you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Well, everybody, thank you again for joining us on this episode of Lost in Roshar. Remember, the most important chapter a man can read is the next one. We'll see you next week to dive into chapters 14 and 15.
And if you loved this episode or enjoyed it at all of the podcast, be sure to leave us a review on whichever platform you listen on. If you have feedback, questions, or theories, please spam read us at lostandroshar@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time on Lost in Roshar. And remember to keep that safe hand covered.